Okay, now that we have the model finished, our next stage is going to be to make a little cyc wall, a little stage for it to render it on, and put some lights in here and a camera. So we're going to go from the top view, and we're going to start off by making a cylinder. Okay, so let's make a cylinder, and let's center it. So right click, move, and make sure all of our numbers down here, right click on all these so it's centered. Okay. And for our size, let's go for 12 feet on our radius. Let's go for 12 feet on our height. And let's go, maybe 32 on our sides. And cap segments, let's go 6. And height segments, 5 is probably okay. Okay, so 12-foot radius, 12-foot height, 5 segments on our height, 6 cap segments, and 32 sides. Okay, so then we're just going to convert this to a poly. Now we want to delete the cap off of it, so we're going to go to polygon here. We want to tell it to ignore back facing and by angle. Just tell it don't pick anything on the back side. Just go pick anything with this angle. And when I click here, it'll pick that whole thing. And so we can delete that and click the top off of it. Now turn both of these off. Go to the top view. And now what I want to do is select all of this half, the first half of this, and delete it. Okay, so now we just want to slide this forward so that we have a little bit of a gap in here. Don't get it too close to the back. We don't want to cast any shadows back there. Something about like this. And now it's going to look quite faceted, but then what we're going to do is come in here and turn our NURMs off and probably 2 iterations, and that'll make us a very nice, soft cyc wall with no angles in the back. Okay, so for this next step, what I want you to do is to go back to the top again, pick this object, and then go down here and click this green button, which is Zoom Extents, which will zoom right in on this object. Now, what we're going to do is rotate our viewport so we're looking straight at this, okay? Because what we're going to try to do is frame it similar to this. I don't want it framed just like this because I think it's too close, you know, there's too much space up here, so, but pretty much like this, but a little bit more centered is what we're going for. So what we're going to do is go down here and get our orbit tool, okay? Make sure we don't have any angle snaps on. Now with this orbit tool, I want you to grab this little square right here and push up, and we're going to rotate it up. And so what we're doing is trying to get us an angle that's something like this, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're trying to get something like that. By clicking on this little square, it'll constrain that, okay? Once I get it pretty close, then we want to go we want to change it from an orthographic to perspective. So once you get it close, hit P, which will change it to a perspective view, okay? Then we want to go Control C, which will convert your perspective to a camera. Now, the other thing we want to do is go ahead and get our render settings set up in here. So let's go up to our render settings. And we want to switch it from our custom to our HD. And we'll do 1280 for a 720 right now. Okay, and let's go ahead and close that. Now, we're not actually looking through the gate of the camera. To do that, you have to go down and click Shift F, and that'll get a safe frame, and now we're actually looking through the gate of the camera. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to close up this gap in here a little bit. So I'm getting this tool right here, which is Dolly Camera, which is just pushing the camera in a little bit. And then I'm going to get my hand tool and move it up a little bit so that it's more centered. And I want to see a little bit more of the top of it. So I'm going to go back to my orbit tool, and I'm going to click, hold down the center, and just drag down a little bit. Watch swinging it too much left or right. We want to stay pretty much looking straight at it. And something probably about like that. I'm going to get a little bit closer. We don't want it looking like we're looking straight down on it. We want to look like we're looking at the front. Okay, I'm looking to see where this is crossing right in here. can see I wanted a little bit more up, so I'm going back to my orbit, clicking just a little bit, and probably something right about like that looks pretty good. Get my hand tool, just center it a little bit better. And I think that's a pretty good place to render from right there. That looks pretty good. Okay, let's go ahead and get our cyc wall back here, and let's go ahead and just put this base shader on it. We're going to change these shaders later, but that'll get us pretty close. And now we're looking pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go up here and hit render. I'm going to pause my recording while it renders, and so we don't have to sit here and watch it render. Okay, there's our rendering, and that looks pretty good. That's pretty nice, what we want. We don't have any lighting in here yet, but that looks pretty close to what we want, and so I'm happy with that. So let's go ahead and save it again. Need to be saving in stages all the time in case something happens. And I'm keeping all my render settings low on this, okay? All right, so now we want to start putting some lights in here, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the top view. And what we're going to do is go to lights, photometric, and we're going to get us a free light, okay? Now, when we do that, make sure you guys have mental ray on. You should already do that, but just make sure you have it on. It's going to ask you to put an exposure control, and we're going to say yes, put an exposure control. And then I'm just going to click right here in the center of the piece to place this light, okay? Now, we're going to go to the front, and we're going to move the light up, okay? And I want you to move it on the Z-axis in here 4 feet. So go in here, just type in 4 feet, and then that's how far we want it up. Okay, on our lights, we turn shadows on here. It's ray trace shadows, okay? Not mental ray shadow map, not area shadow maps, not shadow map, but ray trace shadows, okay? We want to go in here and we're going to set a Kelvin rating. Kelvin rating is the color of the light based on the temperature, okay? We want it to be neutral. Neutral is 6,500. That's pretty much a white light. The lower the number, the light shifts to an orange spectrum. The higher the number, it switches into a blue spectrum. We want this to be neutral. By default, this is a point light. We don't want to be a point light. We want it to be a rectangle, okay? By default, it's a 4 foot by 2 foot rectangle, and I want it to be a 4 foot by 4 foot rectangle. Okay, and then right up here, intensity, we want to kick this into 150, which will be basically a 150 watt light bulb. Now we want to go up here to rendering at the top and go to exposure control. This will bring in our settings for our exposure control. And we want our exposure value. A lot of times it'll be here. We want to change this to exposure value, and let's do 4. And then let's switch to our camera view, and now hit this render preview right here, and this will give you a preview rendering of our piece so that we can kind of adjust before we actually have to do renders. So this is a quick way to do renders really quick. Now, we're getting a lot of reflection back in here, so for right now, let's go ahead and make us a second arch in design, okay? And let's double click on that, and we're going to name this one cyc wall, and we're going to apply that to our wall. And then on this one, we're going to turn down our reflection. Let's just turn it to 0, and let's turn our shininess down to say 0.4. Then it won't be as reflective on the ground. And then let's do another test render, and I'm going to pause it while we're doing that. Okay, so you'll see the rendering here. Now you'll notice it's real grainy and stuff. That's fine. That's because we're keeping our renders kind of low so that we can render quick. But that lighting is pretty much what I want. Okay, just a basic top lighting in here. So the next thing we want to do is some directional lighting. Okay, so what we're going to do with that is we're going to come back to our top. And we're going to add another target light, another photometric light, but we're going to use a target light this time. Because the difference is a free light does not point in any specific way. I have to rotate it. A target light has a target, which is kind of nice. So we're going to click on target. we're going to have this one come from the left. So we click, hold down, and drag to put a target, and then we place the target where we want it to point at. So right there, right-click to stop. Okay, now we're going to have to go to the front view, and then I want to move this up so it's shining down from an angle like so. Okay, so pretty much the same settings on this. So with shadows, ray trace shadows. But in this case, when we're going to our Kelvin, I want this to be more of a blue light. We're going to cast blue from in here. So we're going to go 7800, which will give it a little bit of a blue tint to it. Okay, we're going to make this one not as bright. Let's say this one, I'm not sure what we want to be, but let's just initially start as a 75-watt light. Okay, we want it to be a rectangle, and we'll leave the default of 4 foot by 2 foot with that. And by the way, just so you understand, this is the size of the reflector. So the light is not, it's a little bit hotter on the ball, but the light comes from the reflector. The larger the reflector, the softer the shadow, the lower the smaller reflector, the sharper the shadow. Okay, so let's go in here. Now, just to speed it up, always under your exposure control, if you'll render in here first, that will get you a pretty quick render so you can kind of see what's going on, okay, without having to do your renders. Now, another thing I would tell you to do is when you're doing a lot of lighting, we really want to kick our render settings way down, okay? So we're going to go to this 320 by 180 for right now, so that when we render, we're rendering really small, but that's okay because all we're really trying to do is to see what the lighting is doing. And so rendering small is much faster, and that's looking pretty good. So we have a little bit of a blue light coming in from this direction. Now I want to do the opposite on the other side. So what I'm going to do on this one is to come in, grab this light, holding down my shift key, and I'm just going to swing it to the opposite side as a copy, not an instance, a copy, because we want to change it some. When I come from the front, I'm going to swing it down a little bit. I want it to come in from a little bit lower, like so. And on this one, I'm going to go for maybe a 20%, so it's not as bright. And what we're going to go for is a warmer light. So we're going to say right around 5,000 on it so that it's a warmer light. So we have a white light coming from the top as our main light source. We have a blue light coming from the left and a slightly warm light coming from the right. Switch back to our camera view, and we'll do a render again, another little small render. And now you'll see we'll have a little bit of warmth coming in from this side. And I think that lighting looks pretty good. That's pretty much what we want. Now, if we look at our reference, we'll see that it's pretty blown out. So what we want to do is on this ground, let's go ahead and make this white. Okay, it defaults at gray right now. Let's go ahead and make it white. We don't want it pure white. We want a little bit of tone to it, but not much. And that'll brighten up the background some for us. So we're getting a little bit closer to what we had. Doesn't have to be exactly, but we're getting closer. And now we're getting to where we can get ready and start doing the shaders. Okay, so that's pretty much our lighting. We can adjust it a little bit more when we actually get our shaders on there, but for right now, this looks pretty good. And I'll go ahead and render a larger one so that you can see a larger one real quick. Okay, so there's the render. Like I said, it's still a low quality render, a lot of grain in here, but nice stage setup, nice lighting. So we've got our cyc wall set up. We got some nice lighting in here. We'll always need to adjust the lighting once we get the shaders in there, but the lighting gets us in pretty close to see how our shaders are going to react to it. So the next stage is to actually get our shaders in here and start seeing the final colors that we want on our piece. Okay, thank you.